know he is near, but know not the day, as spring shows that summer is not far away. The language of Jesus in saying that the generation that sees the fig tree shooting and all the other trees, you know that summer is nigh. That generation appreciates that the coming of Jesus is very, very close. And so this moment we desire to have a look at some more of the prophecies that depict the imminence of the coming of Jesus. And these prophecies this time, as Jesus described there in Matthew 24, different segments of prophecies applicable. This one that we're looking at now is the fulfillment of the political prophecies, the prophecies in reference to the nations of this world in their political engagement. We can call it the last generation national strife. The strife of the nations that accumulates to a grand final eruption. It comes back to our contemplation of the volcano that is simmering and is rumbling and has been a volcano all the way through history and has been simmering, but now it's really beginning to rumble. And in reference to the national interactions, this is our research. We recall so vividly from Matthew 24, verses 29 to 35, which we've been reading time and time again through this conference, that the fig tree and all the other trees shooting, and that he tells us there to understand that all these things that he has portrayed in the prophecy of Matthew 24 will be fulfilled to this generation. And as I already intimated, that in Matthew chapter 24, verse 6 and 7, there are prophecies of political or national dimensions there. Matthew 24, verse 6. Here we read, "And you shall hear of wars and rumors of wars. See that you be not troubled, for all these things must come to pass, but the end is not yet. For nation shall rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom." So here Jesus points out that in the prophecies that lead up to the end, don't become disturbed, he said, at the beginning when you see nation rising against nation, because these are just the beginning of events. The end is not yet. And as we have already been highlighting all the way through, that the things that have happened in the past continue to unfold in prophetic descriptions until they come to their grand final display. And if we refer now to verses 15 through to 20, he makes, in the second overview, he brings the attention of his hearers to this. He says, "When ye therefore shall see the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel the prophet stand in the holy place, whoso readeth, let him understand. Then let them which be in Judea flee into the mountains. Let him which is on the housetop not come down to take anything out of his house. Neither let him which is in the field return back to take his clothes. And woe unto them that are with child, and to them that give suck in those days. But pray that your flight be not in the winter, neither on the Sabbath day. Here Jesus draws the attention of his people to Daniel in this prophecy. He says, in the beginning of this next overview, he reveals what is to take place in Jerusalem. And he refers to the prophecy of Daniel, saying, when you shall see the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel stand in the holy place. He's referring to the holy city, Jerusalem, when the pagans come into the area and they stand around the city, in the holy place, around the city. When you see this happening, then run for your life. And of course the story was that the Roman army came to surround Jerusalem, and then for some reason or another that they didn't know, the army disappeared, wasn't there anymore, and they knew that was a sign to run. They could get out of the city. And of course then the army came back after some time, and then anybody that was left in the city was doomed. So the destruction of Jerusalem was forecast in Daniel chapter 9. Let's go there, because Jesus turned our attention there. Daniel chapter 9, reading verse 26 and 27. Daniel 9, 26 and 27. Here Daniel gave the vision or the prophecy that was given to him in writing here, after 62 weeks shall Messiah be cut off, but not for himself. And the people of the prince that shall come shall destroy the city and the sanctuary, and the end thereof shall be with a flood, and unto the end of the war desolations are determined. So here is a prophecy of Jesus the Messiah, and after Messiah was cut off, and as we know, he rose again, the people of the prince that shall come shall destroy the city. And here is a direct prophecy of what will happen to the city of Jerusalem long before. And that the sanctuary even was going to be destroyed. And then he talks about the end of the war. Unto the end of the war, desolations are determined. So there is this long-range forecast in prophecy of what to expect to the very end. It goes on in verse 27. And he shall confirm the covenant with many for 1 week, and in the midst of the week he shall cause the sacrifice and the oblation to cease. This is the sacrifice of Christ, when the lamb was released from the sacrifice there. And for the overspreading of abominations, he shall make it desolate, even until the consummation, and that determined, shall be poured upon the desolate. The marginal reading reads, upon the desolator. So, when the abominations that Jesus talked about in Matthew 24, what Daniel said about the abomination of desolation, he says, run for it. He is referring to this. And for the overspreading of abominations, he shall make it desolate, even until the consummation, the desolation that was to happen to Jerusalem, as we read already in verse 26, that Jerusalem would be destroyed, and then the one who destroyed Jerusalem, the desolator, the consummation and the desolation will pour upon him as well. And so we have the history of Rome desolating Jerusalem, and finally Rome also would be desolated. The desolator would be desolated. Well, if we turn over to Daniel chapter 2, verses 40 to 44, we get at the appreciation of what is meant here, until the consummation, and that determined shall be poured upon the desolator. It's Daniel chapter 2, in the vision that was given to Nebuchadnezzar and was explained by Daniel. Verses 40 to 44. And here the vision of the nations that would become empires one after the other. It comes to the fourth one in verse 40. And the fourth kingdom shall be strong as iron, forasmuch as iron breaketh in pieces and subdueth all things, and as iron that breaketh all these shall it break in pieces and bruise. And whereas thou sawest the feet and toes, part of potter's clay and part of iron, the kingdom shall be divided, but there shall be in it of the strength of iron, forasmuch as thou sawest the iron mixed with miry clay, and as the toes of the feet were part of iron and part of clay, so the kingdom shall be partly strong and partly broken. And whereas thou sawest iron mixed with miry clay, they shall mingle themselves with the seed of men, but they shall not cleave one to another, even as iron is not mixed with clay. And in the days of these kings shall the God of heaven set up a kingdom which shall never be destroyed, and the kingdom shall not be left to other people, but it shall break in pieces and consume all these kingdoms, and it shall stand forever. So once again, we see the vision that points to the iron-like nation, which was none other but Rome, how it would finally become weakened by the desolations that it would fall upon it through the tribes of the barbaric tribes of Europe. They managed to splinter the power of Rome, and there was iron and of clay. Rome continued, and it would continue through in another form. Let's go over there to Daniel chapter 7. Daniel chapter 7, verse 23 to 27. And there again, speaking of the fourth beast, as it was the fourth kingdom in Daniel 2, thus he saith, the fourth beast shall be the fourth kingdom upon earth, which shall be diverse from all kingdoms, and shall devour the whole earth, and shall tread it down and break it in pieces. And the 10 horns out of this kingdom are 10 kings that shall arise, and another shall arise after them, and he shall be diverse from the first. And he shall subdue 3 kings, and he shall speak great words against the Most High, and shall wear out the saints of the Most High, and think to change times and laws, and they shall be given into his hand until a time and times and dividing of time. But the judgment shall sit, and, notice the language again here, they shall take away his dominion, and consume and destroy it unto the end. What did we read in Daniel 9? Until the consummation. So when the desolator will be desolated, consumed and destroyed unto the end. And the picture that we have from this prophecies is that the Roman Empire would fall into into decay, so that there would be strong iron plus weak clay mingled together, and in the days of those kings the kingdom of heaven would be set up. As it is now in Daniel 7, it goes into the detail of the rise of the papacy, the one that will speak great words against the Most High, who comes up among those 10 tribes, the 10 horns, and subdue 3 kings. And there we know the history, how the papacy finally came into control of Italy and of the Vatican, and then this, it culminates and is revealed here in verse 26. But the judgment shall sit, and notice, they shall take away his dominion and consume and destroy it unto the end. So we are to expect that the desolator, that desolated Jerusalem, that became a papal desolator, would finally be desolated, but over a period of time, consumed and destroyed until the end. And this is the picture that we are pursuing here. The fall of Rome, pagan Rome, and then ultimately papal Rome. How would this unfold according to the prophecies? We come there now to Revelation 13, looking at that same detail of the national activities that take place ever since the Roman Empire that desolated Jerusalem would finally be totally desolated at the consummation. Revelation 13, we pick up the picture again of Rome. Revelation 13, verses 1 to 3. And I stood upon the sand of the sea and saw a beast rise up out of the sea, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and upon his horns 10 crowns, and upon his heads the name of blasphemy. And the beast which I saw was like unto a leopard, and his feet were as the feet of a bear, his mouth as the mouth of a lion, and the dragon gave him his power and his seat and great authority. And I saw one of his heads, as it were, wounded to death, and his deadly wound was healed, and all the world wondered after the beast. And then the prophecy continues. Now this is a direct reference to what we were studying there in Daniel, a prophetic picture of the beast that is depicted in a overview of Daniel, where you had the beast that was a bear, and then you had the beast that was a lion, and then you had the beast that was a leopard, and so on. So the leopard, the bear, these are all the nations that came to fruition in the papacy, because the papacy came as a consequence of all those nations beforehand. And the dragon gave him his power. Pagan Rome gave over to papal Rome. And this is the papal Rome, one of the heads that were wounded to death, but it recovered, and all the world wondered after the beast. So the story goes on in verse 10, how ultimately he receives his fatal wound, but is restored again. Verse 10, he that leadeth into captivity shall go into captivity. He that killeth with the sword must be killed with the sword. Here is the patience and faith of the saints. Now here we get a glimpse into the saints, the candidates that are preparing for heaven. Here it comes in the theme of our conference here. There is a people who are going to have patience as they see the development of this and get ready for Jesus to come, because they look back at the history, how Napoleon came and affected the Roman papacy And it was General Berthier, wasn't it, that took the Pope prisoner. Because the papacy had taken a whole lot of Christians into captivity. And here it says, he that leadeth into captivity shall go into captivity through national conflicts. And as the papacy was taken into captivity in 1798, verse 11 shows a rising of, at that same period, another nation. Verse 11, I beheld another beast coming up out of the earth, and he had 2 horns like a lamb, and he spake as a dragon, and he exerciseth all the power of the first beast before him, and causeth the earth and them which dwell therein to worship the first beast, whose deadly wound was healed. And he doeth great wonders, so that he maketh fire come down out of heaven, etc. So what was this other nation that came up out of the earth with 2 horns like a lamb at the time when the papacy was taken captive? 1798, and if you study the history, USA came into prominence and into a nation over the period from 1798 onwards. And so we see the national activities according to prophecy, which Jesus launched us out into, that there would be warfare between nations, the fall of the Roman Empire, the development into the papacy, and the papacy ultimately receiving a deadly wound through national conflict. Napoleon coming there and doing his work. And as we read there, and they will be consumed unto the end. So there is conflict that is depicted here, national conflict. Here is the patience of the saints and the faith of the saints as they look at these events over the history according to fulfillment of prophecy. They come to the point, wow, it's coming, everything is coming to its climax. So if we explore the interplay of the politics of USA, of Rome, and the nations that are depicted in prophecy, we find this in Revelation 11. The 7th trumpet was preceded by the 6th trumpet, and in the 6th trumpet we had the picture of the Ottoman Empire coming to his end in 1843. The fall of the Ottoman Empire, and then commences the 7th trumpet, the 7th period of the national conflict. So USA with Rome and the nations that are all interconnected there, Papal Rome and their nations that it had power over after the deadly wound was healed, USA, the play and counterplay of world affairs. We see that nations that are involved here are all interplaying with the Arab world, as it was there in the fall of the Ottoman Empire. That was a national strife. In 1843 it was played out there. Now, have you heard today of the terminology of a new world order? That language was first coined by George Bush Sr. back in 1990 period, when they had the war in the Middle East there. And he said, this is the beginning of the new world order. I heard him say it on the radio. that terminology of a new world order is expressed also by the Pope and by different nations today. What is it there? And the whole world wondered after the beast. Now, as the whole world interplays together, the nations with all their strife one against the other, and the interesting things that we are seeing today, let's come to Revelation chapter 16. As we see prophecy coming to its climax. Revelation 16, verses 13 to 16. And I saw 3 unclean spirits, like frogs, come out of the mouth of the dragon, and out of the mouth of the beast, and out of the mouth of the false prophet. For they are the spirits of devils, working miracles, which go forth unto the kings of the earth and of the whole world, to gather them to the battle of that great day of God Almighty. Behold, I come as a thief. Isn't that all part of our meditation here? We must get ready. We are to watch, because Jesus' coming is rapidly coming to its fruition. He says, but it's going to be as a thief, in the light of this picture that these 3 unclean spirits are gathering the nations to the battle of the great day of God Almighty. And we are to keep our garments, lest we walk naked and they see our shame. This is referring to the last generation. And what do these 3 unclean spirits do in the national strife? He gathered them together into a place called in the Hebrew tongue Armageddon, mountain of Megiddo. And that place is in the Middle East there. And we want to look at the prophecies, how they come to fruition, to this grand final conflict of nations, by which the last generation can actually see, this is right at the doors now. And the shooting of the fig tree is all part of the scenario, which we're going to see as we go on here. Because when the nation of Israel came back to power, it was all for the one purpose, to bring to fulfillment this prophecy, as we were reading it there in chapter 16, these 3 unclean spirits leading people to Armageddon. What is the dragon? The unclean frog that came out of the mouth of the dragon. You just go to Revelation chapter 12, and you see there that particular segment of the world nations. Revelation 12, verse 3 and 4. And there appeared another wonder in heaven. Behold, a great red dragon, having 7 heads and 10 horns, 7 crowns upon his heads. And his tail drew the 3rd part of the stars of heaven, and did cast them to the earth. And the dragon stood before the woman, which was ready to be delivered, for to devour her child as soon as it was born. Come over to verse 9. And the great dragon was cast out, that old serpent called the devil and Satan, which deceiveth the whole world. He was cast out into the earth, and his angels were cast out with him. Did you notice here that the great red dragon had 7 heads and 10 horns? And 7 crowns upon his heads. This is a picture there of national dimensions, how this nation, this beast with 7 heads and 10 horns, that's Rome. But this is pagan Rome. The pagan worships that Satan was behind. So the 3 unclean spirits, one of them comes out of pagan origination, or pagan nations. We already understand who the beast is. That was papal Rome. And what about the false prophet? The unclean spirit that comes out of the mouth of the false prophet. Well, let's go and read about the false prophet in Revelation 19. Revelation 19, verse 20. And here it tells you who the false prophet is in the language of the use of the word false prophet, where it says in verse 20, "And the beast was taken, and with him the false prophet." What was he doing, the false prophet? "That wrought miracles before him, with which he deceived them that had received the mark of the beast, and them that worshipped his image. These both were cast into a lake of fire burning with brimstone." So the beast, the papacy, and the false prophet that wrought miracles before the beast. Well, let's go over there and get it abundantly clear what this is talking about in Revelation 11, as it is depicted there in verses 15. Revelations 11. Here is another prophecy that helps us to see the unfolding of the national events on planet Earth. Verses 15 through to 18. "And the 7th angel," this is the 7th trumpet of the 7 trumpets. The 7 trumpets prophecies has to do with the conflict of nations from the time of Christ to the end. "The 7th angel sounded, and there were great voices in heaven saying, The kingdoms of this world are become the kingdoms of our Lord and of his Christ, and he shall reign for ever and ever. And the 24 elders which sat before God on their seats fell upon their faces and worshipped God, saying, We give thee thanks, O Lord God Almighty, which art and wast and art to come." Isn't that a beautiful thing? The I am, which art and wast and art to come, past, present and future, that they are marveling at what we can see if we study the prophecies. Past, present and future as one picture. They worship him for seeing that. "Because thou hast taken to thee thy great power and hast reigned." And here it is, verse 18, "And the nations were angry, and thy wrath is come, and the time of the dead, that they should be judged, and that thou shouldest give reward unto thy servants the prophets, and to the saints and them that fear thy name, small and great, and shouldest destroy them which destroy the earth." So in the unfolding of the history and the representation of that in prophecy, we come in the 7th trumpet of the nations being angry, and the time coming about now that with these nations in conflict, it's going to be the day of God's wrath, where he is going to establish his kingdom and crush the others. Revelation 13, verse 11. "And I beheld another beast coming up out of the earth, and he had 2 horns like a lamb, and he spake as a dragon. He exercises all the power of the first beast, and what?" Verse 13, "He doeth great wonders, so that he maketh fire come down out of heaven." Verse 14, "He deceiveth them that dwell in the earth by means of those miracles which he had power to do in the sight of the beast." Can you see who the false prophet is? By the comparison of these 2 scriptures, the false prophet that is thrown into the lake of fire with the beast is that one with which he wrought miracles before him the beast, with which he deceived them that received the mark of the beast. So this false prophet from Scripture is identified perfectly clearly as USA, apostate Protestant USA. So out of these three religious powers, paganism and the nations that are pagan religious people, out of the papal nations, and out of the apostate Protestant nations, and USA being the head of that, comes three unclean spirits to do what? These three world religio-political thrusts for one object, as we read it there in Revelation 16, to gather them together to the battle of the great God. A warfare, national strife. And so what we are seeing here, that when the wrath of God comes, it is as a culmination of the national strife that has been developing and developing until finally it leads to the day of God's wrath, to Armageddon. And when Armageddon takes place, these are the plagues that happen just before the literal coming and the physical coming of Jesus. So the people that see the fig tree shooting, they see the development of all these things as we've just seen them in prophecy now coming to their climax. And Revelation 16 pointed out there that this is the day of God's wrath, in which the nations are going to gather for battle. Now remember, these are three unclean spirits, like frogs, coming out of the mouth of these. This is the picture here of the frogs in these different parts of the world under these different religious influences. So religion has something to do that stirs political strife. And at the moment we're looking at the political strife. But the prophecy tells us here that these three unclean spirits are doing something to create war among the nations. And this is going to be the outpouring of God's wrath. Now, does God destroy? This is what, this is God's wrath. But we see now, again, a beautiful display of the society of heaven, that when God is wroth, we've touched on this before, when God is wroth, He doesn't do the slaying as such, but as we read it before, and we read it now in 2 Chronicles 18, verses 18 to 22. Remember, they are three unclean spirits. They come from Satan. And there in 2 Chronicles 18, verses 18 to 22, we have a glimpse of how God actually works to slay the wicked. Because here in this 2 Chronicles quote, we pick up this picture. That's 2 Chronicles 18. In this whole prophetic outline, we see the mentality of heaven, the orchestration of God behind the scenes of national strife, that the last generation can get a good understanding for their own appreciation. Here it is in verses 18. Again he said, "Therefore hear the word of the Lord. I saw the Lord sitting upon his throne, and all the host of heaven standing on his right hand and on his left. And the Lord said, Who shall entice Ahab, king of Israel, that he may go up and fall at Ramoth Gilead? And one spake, saying after this manner, and another saying after that manner. Then there came out a spirit, and stood before the Lord, and said, I will entice him. And the Lord said unto him, Wherewith? And he said, I will go out and be a lying spirit in the mouth of all his prophets. And the Lord said, Thou shalt entice him, and thou shalt prevail. Go out and do even so. Now therefore, behold, the Lord hath put a lying spirit in the mouth of these thy prophets, and the Lord hath spoken evil against thee. And the destruction of wicked King Ahab came about because of the lying spirit, that God wanted Ahab to be destroyed because of his wickedness. He's going to destroy the wickedness, the wicked people of this planet. How does he do it? Exactly the same scenario. 3 unclean spirits. He permits them to go to the nations to lead them to symbolic Ramoth Gilead, to lead them to Armageddon, so that they would be destroyed in his wrath, in his grief. Let us see how this is written in Joel chapter 3, how these unclean spirits are working to develop this final volcanic eruption of national strife. Joel chapter 3. These 3 unclean spirits sent from God, because the world has reached its climax of evil. But it is the 3 unclean spirits that are doing it and gathering them together. Here is the call. Joel chapter 3, and reading there verses 9 to 16. Proclaim ye this among the whom? The Gentiles. Joel 3 verse 9. Proclaim ye this among the Gentiles. This is God giving a message so that the call of pagans is to be heard. Prepare war. Wake up the mighty men. Let all the men of war draw near. Let them come up. Beat your plowshares into swords, and your pruning hooks into spears. Let the weak say, I am strong. Assemble yourselves and come, all ye, who? Heathen. 3 unclean spirits working with the unbelievers. Now, doesn't this say something to you if you're going to be a last generation Christian? Should you engage in war? Any Christian people engaging in war are on the path to God's wrath of destruction, because it is the unclean spirits that is calling them. That's why God's people do not go to war in these last days. So the call is, let the weak nations say, I am strong. And that's what we had been touching on in the beginning of our series, that these trees all shoot. All the different nations since 1948, the weak ones are saying, we are now strong. We are now a nation with our own army. Gather them all together, the men of war. Assemble yourselves. Come, all ye heathen, and gather yourselves together round about. Gather them to a place called Armageddon. Thither cause thy mighty ones to come down, O Lord. Let the heathen be awakened. Come up to the valley of Jehoshaphat, for there will I sit to judge all the heathen round about. Put ye in the sickle, for the harvest is ripe. What's that? What did we study? You know that when the fig tree shoots and all the other trees, you know that summer is nigh. And what follows after summer? The harvest. Powerful how the scriptures paint the picture for us. Come, get you down, for the press is full, the fats overflow, for their wickedness is great. Multitudes, multitudes in the valley of decision, for the day of the Lord is near in the valley of decision. Goes on to say The sun and the moon shall be darkened, the stars shall withdraw their shining. The Lord also shall roar out of Zion, and utter his voice from Jerusalem, and the heavens and the earth shall shake. But at that time, when it has all come to this climax, what happens? But the Lord will be the hope of his people and the strength of the children of Israel. Beautiful. Now, as what we were reading there is more prophetic detail that links up together with this so that you get the picture perfectly clear. The manner of procedure to gather these people together. What is the procedure to gather them together, as is the call here? How does it happen? The Bible plays it out. Revelation 16 was the statement in verse 12. Revelation 16, verse 12, where the sixth plague, the sixth angel, pours out his vial upon the great river Euphrates, and that the water thereof was dried up, that the ways of the kings of the east might be prepared. The river Euphrates, what is a river symbolic of? Now we're looking at another picture, not a trees, but a river. What is a river symbolic of? Come over to Isaiah chapter 8, verse 7. Isaiah chapter 8, verse 7. Now therefore, behold, the Lord bringeth up upon them the waters of the river, strong and many, even the king of Assyria and all his glory. And he shall come up over all his channels, and go over all his banks. Here is an understanding of what a river represents in prophetic description. Like in this case, it is the king of Assyria. That is the river, the nation that is related to that river. Assyria, he will come and flow over all his channels in his political national strife. He will conquer like a river flooding itself. So when the river Euphrates is dried up, it's the opposite to a river flooding. It's the opposite in the sense that here you have a nation that wants to be warlike, but its support to create war is taken away. So let's go to Revelation chapter 9 for a moment and look at the detail of this Euphrates River in the meaning of things of the trumpets. Revelation 9, verse 13 to 15. The sixth angel sounded, and I heard a voice from the four horns of the golden altar which is before God, saying to the sixth angel, which had the trumpet, Loose the four angels, which are bound in the great river Euphrates. And the four angels were loosed, which were prepared for an hour, and a day, and a month, and a year, for to slay the third part of men. And the number of the army of the horsemen were 200,000, etc. Can you see? The river Euphrates has to do with national ability to make war. And it's directly here, the sixth trumpet, is dealing with the Ottoman Empire. Because the river Euphrates runs down through the territory of these four angels, or these four generals, which composed the Ottoman Empire. So if in this case the river Euphrates was the Arab nations, what is the river Euphrates that dries? It's self-evident. It can't be anything else but the nations that that the river Euphrates runs through, as it was there in the sixth trumpet. So there it is then, that the nations in their interaction are relating to the Arab world, that the river Euphrates in the time of the plagues dries up. The nation loses its power, comes to its end. Oh, that was Daniel 11, wasn't it? Come over to Daniel 11:41, the king of the north, and there we have exactly that same scenario. Daniel 11, verses 41 to 45, talking of the king of the north there, which is none other but Turkey, and Turkey was the headquarters of the Ottoman Empire. Daniel 11, verse 41 to 45, speaking of the king of the north there, he shall enter also into the glorious land, and many countries shall be overthrown, but these shall escape out of his hand, even Edom and Moab, and the chief of the children of Ammon. He shall stretch forth his hand also upon the countries, and the land of Egypt shall not escape, but he shall have power over the treasures of gold and of silver, and over all the precious things of Egypt, and the Libyans and the Ethiopians shall be at his steps. But tidings out of the east and out of the north shall trouble him. Therefore he shall go forth with great fury to destroy and utterly to make away many. And this was history that has been fulfilled in the past, in the time of our pioneers. And as also was the prophecy of the sixth seal, where they pointed to 1843, when the Ottoman Empire would lose its full control. Verse 45. So this Arab world, these Arab states, the king of the north that was headquartered in Turkey, and he shall plant the tabernacles of his palace between the seas in the glorious holy mountain. And we already have studied this once before. At that time shall Michael stand up. At that time, when he plants his tabernacles of his palace between the seas, the glorious holy mountain, in Jerusalem, when that time comes, the probation has closed. And the preparation for the Armageddon is all afoot. Because it says, yet he shall come to his end, and none shall help him. Does that sound like the drying up of the river Euphrates? Exactly that. And so, never to mistake this, that the description of the Arab states is here talked about. We just check it with Isaiah 21, verse 16. Isaiah 21, verse 16. For thus hath the Lord said unto me, within a year, according to the years of an hireling, and all the glory of Kedar shall fail. So, as you examine the plagues, they fall in one day, which in prophecy is 1 year. And among the plagues is the drying up of the river Euphrates. Within 1 year, according to the years of an hireling. This is not a prophetic year, this is a literal year. All the glory of Kedar shall fail. And who's Kedar? Genesis 25 verse 13 tells you. It is the offspring from one of the sons of Ishmael. And that is none other but the Arab states. So the Arab states will come to their end, and none shall help them when they establish their palace in the glorious holy mountain, when they declare their jihad to attack the world, to make a world empire that they have been trying to do ever since they lost the world, their Ottoman Empire. And so here we have now come to the stage of the last generation beholding the national strife that has been going on ever since Jesus started there in the description of the fall of Jerusalem by the Romans, and the desolations upon Rome and the desolations upon the rest of the world in time. Everything we've studied here has come now to its final fruition. Political interaction, all involving the different nations, the pagan nations, the papal and apostate Protestant nations, coming together to fight in the Middle East. Now I want to read, with what we just read here in Daniel, the prophecy of he shall come to his end and none shall help him, and he shall put his tabernacle of his palaces in the glorious holy mountain. Let us come to the words of the spirit of prophecy that tell us that these events of Daniel 11, which we have just seen, are connected directly with Revelation 9, with Revelation 16, with everything we have been reading here. The spirit of prophecy points us directly to our time. It says here in Welfare Ministry, page 136, paragraph 5. The judgments of God are in the land. The wars and rumors of wars, the destruction by fire and flood, say clearly that the time of trouble, a very important language here, that the time of trouble which is to increase until the end is very near at hand. That was written by Sister White in 1904. So she is forecasting that this great time of trouble that shall increase unto the end is very near. We have no time to lose. The world is stirred with the spirit of war. The prophecies of the 11th of Daniel have almost reached their final fulfillment. We who are in this generation, who have seen the prophecies fulfilled, as Jesus said, those who see the fig tree shooting, this generation shall not pass, they will see that what is written here, the prophecy of Daniel in Sister White's time, has nearly come to its fulfillment, almost reached their final fulfillment, which is the close of probation. What a profound picture that is painted here for us now, as we are seeing the beast and the false prophet doing their work, the pagan nations doing their work, all fulfilling prophecy in front of our eyes, fulfilling the last vestige of Daniel chapter 11 is coming to its climax. The eruption of national strife is about to take place, the outpouring of God's wrath in Armageddon. Indeed, and what we were reading there about Israel receiving its nationhood again was so that all the national strife that would take place, which if you look at it carefully is all looming. In fact, in Jerusalem there is constant vigilance by the army for the rumblings of strife that they have to keep under control. I saw this in a footage not so very long ago. They know that something is dangerously ahead. And when the Middle East situation comes to its final fruition, the mountain is going to erupt. And that's the vials of God's wrath. And notice Jeremiah 25. There it is. This is then the great final in which God's people, as we were reading there, here is the patience of those that are his people, and he will come, but he will come to protect his people. Jeremiah 25. Here it is, verse 15 to 17. For thus saith the Lord God of Israel unto me, take the wine cup of this fury at my hand, and cause all the nations to whom I send thee to drink it. And they shall drink and be moved and be mad because of the what? The sword, the warfare, that I will send among them. Then took I the cup at the Lord's hand, and made, all nations to drink unto whom the Lord hath sent me. And then he notice all the nations that he names. And what is one of them? Verse 18. To wit, Jerusalem, and the cities of Judah, and the kings thereof, and the princes thereof. And then he names the whole rest of the nations of the world, all right down. And very clearly, did you remember reading there, the Lord will roar from his temple? Here it is in verse 30. Therefore prophesy thou against them all these words, and say unto them, the Lord shall roar from on high, and utter his voice from his holy habitation. He shall mightily roar upon his habitation. He shall give a shout, as they that tread the grapes, against all the inhabitants of the earth. At the grapes are harvested in the harvest time. And the people who make wine, they trample it. The winepress of what? God's wrath. Verse 28. Interesting. And it shall be, if they refuse to take the cup at thine hand to drink, then shalt thou say unto them, thus saith the Lord of hosts, you shall certainly drink. Oh, I don't want to fight, but the evil spirits come along and convince them to go and fight. For lo, now comes an interesting statement, for lo, I begin to bring evil on the city which is called by my name. And should you be utterly unpunished? You shall not be unpunished, for I will call for a sword upon all the inhabitants of the earth, saith the Lord of hosts. There will be a national strife, and the only one of the plagues of Revelation chapter 16 that is national is the one that we read about Armageddon. All the other ones are natural events in nature. This one is the culmination of national strife, which we today, ever since 1948, we have seen the history of the past. The First World War, the Second World War, 1948. Nations that didn't partake in the world wars now become strong, so that they can all beat their plowshares into swords, into armory for warfare, and all nations will come together under these spirits, these unclean spirits, ploughing on, because Satan is convincing them to go and fight, like he convinced Ahab to go and fight. And God is saying, go ahead. You are given freedom to do it. because now probation has closed and the angels are letting go the ferocious anger of Satan. So there it is in verse 31. A noise shall come even to the ends of the earth, for the Lord hath a controversy with the nations. He will plead with all flesh. He will give them that are wicked to the sword, saith the Lord. Thus saith the Lord of hosts, behold, evil shall go forth from nation to nation, and a great whirlwind shall be raised up from the coasts of the earth. And the slain of the Lord shall be at that day from one end of the earth even unto the other end of the earth. They shall not be lamented, neither gathered nor buried. They shall be dung upon the ground. We could read many other prophecies that give us the clear understanding of what we have been reading so far. But this is sufficient here now to see that we are indeed in that generation that saw the fig tree shooting. For what purpose? So that the national strife that is to be conducted in the very last generation for the final destruction of this planet Earth, where all the people are going to be slaughtered, as we read it there, the winepress of God's wrath is going to take place. And as Sister White was telling us there, we are to understand and get ourselves thoroughly ready at this time. What did she say there? We have no time to lose. Back in 1904, what about now? The world is stirred with the spirit of war. The prophecies of the 11th of Daniel have almost reached their final fulfillment. Now, it's fulfilling. We're watching it happen. Because the trouble has increased until the end. We are watching it. And notice paragraph 4 of Welfare Ministry, page 136. She says, soon grievous troubles will arise among the nations. Trouble that will not cease until Jesus comes. Haven't the nations been trying to stop the wars ever since the Second World War? But no, it increases and increases. There's one after the Second World War, there was the Korean War, and that's still rumbling there in Korea, the North and the South. Then came the war in Vietnam. Now you can see all the wars in the Middle East going on. It's intensifying. It's not getting easier. That's just what it says here. Trouble that will not cease until Jesus comes. As never before, we need to press together, serving Him who has prepared His throne in the heavens and whose kingdom ruleth over all. God has not forsaken His people, and our strength lies in not forsaking Him. And here we have the beautiful meditation of this conference, that in these circumstances of national strife, God's people are actually comforted that they should now press together, because what we've been singing in our hymn, hold fast till I come, because it's all ready to take place. And this should be, at this time, the full concentration of us all, because we can see the fruition of all these prophecies. Everything that has been prophesied has come to its climax, right in front of our eyes. Whether it was the social, whether it was the nature, now the national, and tomorrow we will look at the religious. And we are left with the clarity of prophecy fulfilling in front of our eyes. So praise the Lord, and let us now digest this material and remember what we have already learned on all these things, how they all come together for us to see exactly where we stand.